Donald Trump seems to be on a relentless path towards the Republican nomination. I came on with you the other week and said that Nikki Haley had a very steep but narrow path towards victory. It's now that she's climbing the north face of the Eiger without any ropes. And I think that's going to be incredibly difficult for her. I don't see how she can do it. But I think she's calculating to stay in, to see if anything happens that might trip Donald Trump up, in which case she would be the last woman standing. But in a realistic prospect, can she win enough states to take the Republican nomination? Answer, no.
A man with 91, is it Nike, facing 91 various court cases, one of them involving payments that might or might not have been made to a prostitute. I said earlier this morning, most other countries, developed countries in the world, this would be unimaginable. Before we go to the first question, how so, John?
Because for every other politician I've ever covered over a very long journalistic career, you know there are certain things that are going to break you. With Donald Trump, the reverse effect seems to happen. A year ago, he was looking like he was a spent force. You know, the wake of the January the 6th riots, all the rest of it, he looked on the floor. He suddenly gets charged and everyone thinks, well, this is certainly it. And that has made him stronger. And Donald Trump has been very adroit in the way he's managed these charges and said, look, if they're going to come after me, imagine, and they are, imagine what they could do to you. I am the fire break between Joe Biden's illegal Justice Department and the rest of you. And that has garnered support. Now, he's got strong support in his base. Can he reach out beyond the Republican base to win the presidential election? That's the big question.
Let's get to the questions. First up, Jerry in St Albans. You're through to John. Go ahead, Jerry.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, John.
Morning.
Who else is there? Who else can the people choose in the elections? I mean, Biden is Biden, but to have somebody like Donald Trump back in again, I mean, we're really looking at kind of like a complete disaster.
Well, this is something, Jerry, don't go. This is something I'm asked a lot, John. I think at the time of the election, President Biden will be 81. Donald Trump, I think, will be 78. And often I'm asked, is this the best a country with goodness knows how many 100 million people can come up with? Jon Sopel.
Answer, no. I mean, of course they can do better. You know that old phrase, it's two bald men fighting over a comb? This is two old men fighting over a Zimmer frame. Except the only difference is that this Zimmer frame has a red button on it which can cause nuclear Armageddon. Should we be scared? Yeah, we should be scared that this could be who is leading the free world, as we like to call it. Look, there are plenty...
As Jerry says, why can't
Yeah,
they?
I know. Well, because Donald Trump has got such a powerful grip on the Republican Party, and he kind of operates by terror. People are frightened of Donald Trump. And so senior Republicans who think, well, maybe I could have a go at it, just don't want to get in the race. And so you've been left with people who aren't that great. Joe Biden is the incumbent, and he thinks, and maybe he's right, that if anyone's going to fight Donald Trump, I'm the best place to do it. They don't like his vice president, Kamala Harris. There are a number of other governors and senators who think, well, maybe I could have a crack at it. I still think there is a remote possibility, I mean, it's getting remoter with each passing day, that it won't be Trump versus Biden in November, that something will happen. I mean, both of them are quite old. Both of them not exactly in the fittest state. Both of them have got some pressures on them, different pressures. It's possible that Biden pulls out before the Democratic convention.
There is a democratic process where that could feasibly happen, that Biden... I think, by the way, John, if it is Trump, that will be mano a mano, won't it? It will be two balls. But just say Haley comes. Could Biden step back?
It's possible that Biden...
Okay.
I was speaking to someone very senior, kind of follows Washington politics very closely. He said the only person that can tell Joe Biden to stand down is Jill Biden, his wife.
Okay.
Problem there is Jill Biden really likes being first lady. So she's not ever keen for him to stand down. It's possible that you get to near the Democratic convention, which is going to take place in Chicago in August this year, and Biden suddenly says, I'm standing down, and then you have a convention, like a party political conference, where they will choose who their person should be. The trouble with that is you've got an election in November. You've got to build a ground game that can run across the whole country, and that is a tough call.
Jerry, thank you. Peter in Wimbledon, you're through to Jon Sopel. Go ahead, Peter. Morning to you, sir.
Good morning. I'd just like to kind of reiterate what you just said, Nick. My question would be around the fact that about American nations as a whole, taking into account all the indictment, taking into account that Trump advisors and lawyers are now either convicted, serving time in prison, or been pardoned by Trump. The fact that he is self-confessed sex offender, pathological liar, narcissist. And overall, what do you think John makes, apart from the base, because clearly base will vote for him regardless, but overall, the American nation, what does it tell us about the American nation who can kind of see through this? You know, we all outside America can see it clearly and see the danger that Trump poses, not just to America, but to the free world as such, you know. But why the Americans are so tribal, so to say. You know, I have my opinion, but I'd like to hear yours.
Okay, let's get John in.
I think the thing, Peter, is that you've got to understand that America, for the most part, and at various times in its history, has been very inward-looking, thinks it's asked to play the global policeman far too often, doesn't want to do it. And there is a isolationism in America. It's a huge country, 3,000 miles across. And there's an awful lot of the time that they just want the outside world to go away. And so when they see things that are happening in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in the Balkans, wherever it happens to be, there is a sizable chunk of Americans who will always say, what has this got to do with me? And Donald Trump, standing up there, all the points you make are entirely legitimate, but when he says, I want to make our borders safe so that we're not getting illegal immigrants flooding in, when he says, I want to bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States, when he says that we've got to look after our veterans, it resonates with a sizable chunk of the American people. And I think that for that reason, there are still an awful lot of Republicans who want Donald Trump to be their standard bearer. That kind of conservative populism that he has made his own is still resonates with a huge number of people.
And of course, John, just because Peter and others see them as lies, that doesn't mean his base sees them as lies. They're buying it. As you rightly said, if they're coming for me, an ex-president, you better be damn careful. They're coming for you next. John.
Exactly. And I think that is the thing. The big issue, I think, in the coming election in November, if it is Biden versus Trump, it's not going to be so much Biden versus Trump. It's going to be Biden versus the sofa, or Trump versus the sofa. Can I be bothered to vote for either of them? So just as I think Donald Trump has got huge problems to build out support from his Republican base, I think the same applies to Joe Biden. Who's going to go out and vote enthusiastically for Joe Biden come November? I think it's a big problem.